If you were any good, you'd fix the car without tools. He mocked the elderly mechanic, but Walter Thompson watched the activity in the auto shop as he dried his hands on an oil-stained towel. After 35 years working with engines, he had never faced such humiliation as what he was about to endure that Tuesday morning. The black Cadillac screeched its tires as it pulled into the small lot of Thompson Auto Repair, located in the Hopeville neighborhood on Chicago's South Side. The driver stepped out, slamming the door hard, looking around with undisguised contempt. "You the mechanic here?" the man asked, adjusting the gold watch on his wrist. "Yes, sir." "Walter Thompson, at your service," the older man replied, extending his hand, which was ignored. "I need my car fixed in an hour, tops. I've got an important meeting and can't be late," the customer declared, crossing his arms over his spotless blue shirt. Walter walked over to the vehicle and popped the hood. The engine was making a strange noise, something he immediately recognized as a timing belt issue. It would take at least 3 hours to do the job right. "Listen, sir. Sorry, I didn't catch your name." "Richard Bennett, and I don't care how long it usually takes. I need to be out of here in an hour." Walter took a deep breath and grabbed his toolbox. The wrenches were over 20 years old, some worn down from constant use. The electric drill had broken the week before, and he still didn't have the money to fix it. "If you were any good, you'd fix it without tools," Richard snapped, pulling out his phone and starting to record. "Check this out, folks. The cheapest mechanic on the South Side." Walter felt his face burn with shame but kept working. His hands, marked by decades of honest labor, trembled slightly as he gripped the worn wrench. From the office, Emily Thompson watched the scene with clenched fists. She had managed the shop with her father since finishing her business degree 5 years earlier. She started to stand, but Walter shook his head subtly, asking her not to interfere. "Dad, you don't have to take this," she whispered when Richard wasn't looking. "Let it go, sweetheart. I've been through worse." Richard kept recording, making snide remarks about the shop's condition. The peeling walls, the old tools, everything was fodder for his social media video. "Folks, you won't believe what I'm seeing here. I brought my Cadillac to a shop that looks like it's stuck in the past. This mechanic's probably as old as my car," he laughed loudly, making sure Walter heard. Dear listeners, if you're enjoying this story, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. It really helps us out. Now back to it. Walter kept working in silence. He quickly diagnosed the problem. Besides the timing belt, there was an issue with the cooling system that could cause the engine to overheat. It was serious and would take time and care. "Mr. Bennett, I need to talk to you about what I found." "Spit it out, old man. I'm in a hurry." "It's not just the belt. There's something in the cooling system that could cause major trouble if not fixed properly." Richard rolled his eyes and kept fiddling with his phone. "So of course you'd make up another problem. Heard that one before. You guys always pull this to squeeze more money out of customers." "Sir, I'm not trying to—" "Listen here," Richard cut in, jabbing a finger at Walter. "I looked you up online and found out you're the cheapest shop around. Know why? Because you're the worst. Then don't come spinning me some tale about a serious problem." Walter lowered his head and went back to work. He decided to focus only on what had been requested, even though he knew he was leaving a serious issue unresolved. As he worked under the hood, Walter heard Richard answering a call. "Hey, babe. No, I won't make it for lunch. I'm in a super important meeting." "What do you mean, what meeting? A business meeting, obviously." Walter glanced up for a moment. Through the reflection in the windshield, he saw Richard gesturing nervously while lying to whoever was on the other end of the line. "I promise next week we'll do something as a family, okay? I gotta go now." When Richard hung up, Walter noticed a shift in his expression. For a moment, the arrogant man looked tired, almost sad. But soon he was back to recording his mocking videos. "Hey folks, still here waiting for the old man to fix my car. Check out the tools he's using," he said, filming Walter's worn-out wrenches. "This stuff is straight out of the Stone Age." Walter needed a grinder to adjust a part, but the tool had broken the month before. He started improvising, using a hand file to do the same job. It would take longer, but it would work. "Wow, this is slow," Richard commented. "At the dealership, this would have been done by now." "At the dealership, you'd pay 3 times as much," Walter muttered without looking up. "What did you say?" "Nothing, sir. Just saying every place has its own way of working." Emily brought her father a glass of water, and he thanked her with a tired smile. She took the chance to observe Richard more closely. Despite his arrogance, there was something about him that bothered her. He seemed like someone trying to prove something to himself. "Dad, do you want me to call old Joe to borrow his grinder?" "No need, sweetheart. I'm almost done." Walter continued the manual work, his experienced hands shaping the part with a precision that would impress any expert. Richard, who had stopped recording for a moment, discreetly watched the elderly mechanic's skill. At 11:30, Walter closed the hood and started the car. The engine purred smoothly, without any strange noises. The basic service was done, but he knew the cooling system issue was still there, waiting to show up soon. "All done, Mr. Bennett. The car's running." Richard tested the vehicle, revved it a few times, and seemed satisfied. "How much?" $200 for the belt service." $200? I thought it'd be cheaper here. Walter began wiping his hands with a rag. Those $200 would make a big difference in the family's tight budget. Emily was still paying for college, and the shop's bills were never easy to settle. Richard took out his wallet and tossed the money onto the shop floor. "Pick it up, and next time invest in better tools if you want to charge fair prices." Walter looked at the bills on the oil-soaked floor. His eyes filled with tears he tried to hide as he slowly bent down to pick up the money. His back ached from decades hunched over engines, but the pain in his chest was far worse. Emily couldn't stay quiet any longer. "Sir, that was unnecessary. My father worked hard on your car." "Your daughter?" Richard looked from Walter to Emily. "At least one person in this family knows how to speak properly." "Emily, go back inside," Walter said, pocketing the money. Richard got in the car and started it. Everything seemed to be working perfectly. He felt vindicated, as if he'd taught the humble mechanic a lesson. "Thanks for the service, old man. Next time I need a good laugh, I'll come back here." The Cadillac left the auto repair shop, kicking up a cloud of dust. Walter stood still for several minutes, watching the car drive away. He knew that in a few weeks, when the cooling system failed completely, Richard would face a much bigger loss than the $200 he had paid. "Dad, why did you let him treat you like that?" asked Emily, hugging Walter. "Because sometimes people need to learn things the hard way, sweetheart. And because I've already learned that humility doesn't make anyone less of a person." That afternoon, Walter worked on other cars with the same dedication as always. Every customer was treated with respect and care, no matter how much they paid for the service. That was how he had built his reputation in the neighborhood over decades. At 5 in the evening, as he was closing up the shop, Emily mentioned a video going viral on social media. "Dad, have you seen that video of a guy humiliating a mechanic? People are really criticizing it online." "I don't mess much with that internet stuff, honey. People are furious about the guy's attitude. Some are even trying to find out who the mechanic is to support him." Walter shook his head and kept organizing his tools. For him, what mattered was doing good work and having a clear conscience. 3 weeks later, on a rainy Thursday morning, the black Cadillac returned to the shop. But this time, Richard didn't step out with arrogance. The car was being towed, steam rising from the hood. "Do you remember me?" Richard asked, his voice completely different from the first time. "I sure do, sir. Engine trouble." The car overheated on the road. The dealership mechanic said something in the cooling system wasn't fixed right. Walter opened the hood and immediately spotted the problem. It was exactly what he had tried to explain 3 weeks earlier. The cooling system had completely failed, damaging the engine, now costing at least $3,000 to repair. "It's that issue I mentioned last time, Mr. Bennett." Richard fell silent, processing the information. Walter didn't show any satisfaction in being right. On the contrary, he seemed genuinely concerned about his customer's loss. You warned me about this." "Yes, sir. But I understand you were in a hurry and just wanted the basics." Richard sat down on an old chair in the corner of the shop. For the first time, he looked around and really saw the place. The old but well-kept tools, the carefully organized parts, the photos on the wall showing Walter with other mechanics over the years. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us newcomers. Now, back to the story. How much will it cost to fix? Well, Mr. Bennett, I'll be honest. It won't be cheap. The engine took a lot of damage from overheating. The dealership would charge at least $4,000. And here? Here, I could do it for $2,500, but it'll take about 5 days. I'll need to order some parts. Richard ran a hand over his face. He was already facing financial trouble at work, and this unexpected expense would be a hard blow. Do you take installments? Walter glanced at Emily, who gave a small nod. Yes, sir. We can split it into 4 payments, no interest. Why? Why are you being nice to me after how I treated you? Walter stopped what he was doing and looked Richard straight in the eye. Because everyone deserves a second chance, sir. And because I don't work just to make money, I work because I like helping people. Richard felt a lump in his throat. It had been months since he'd heard such kind words. At work, all he faced was pressure and demands. At home, he barely spoke to his family. He had become someone even he didn't like. Mr. Thompson, I want to apologize for what happened last time. No need to apologize, Mr. Bennett. What matters is that we can now fix your car. No, I really need to. I was very rude to you. I had no right to treat you that way. Walter kept working, but Richard noticed a small smile on the mechanic's face. You know, Mr. Bennett, I've worked here for over 30 years. I've seen a lot of people go through tough times. Sometimes a person isn't being rude to us. They're taking out something that's hurting them inside. Those words hit Richard like a punch to the gut. That was exactly it. He was taking out his frustration with his own life on others. How do you know that? Experience, sir. When you work with people for a long time, you learn to look beyond appearances. Richard watched Walter work. The elderly mechanic handled the tools with impressive delicacy and precision. Every movement was calculated, the result of decades of experience. Mr. Thompson, have you always been a mechanic? No, sir. I used to work at an auto parts factory. I was a specialized engine technician. But the company closed 20 years ago, and I had to make do. How did you end up here? I bought this shop with the factory's severance pay. It was an old dream to work for myself. Richard kept asking questions, and Walter answered patiently. Little by little, he learned the story of a man who had faced many hardships, but never lost his dignity. And did Emily always help out here? Since she was little, she played around the cars. When she grew up, she studied business to help organize the shop better. She's a daughter any father would be proud to have. Emily, who was listening from the office, smiled emotionally. It had been a long time since she'd heard her father speak of her with such affection to a customer. On the second day of work, Richard returned to check on the repair progress. He brought coffee and donuts for Walter and Emily. You didn't have to go to the trouble, Mr. Bennett. It's no trouble. It's the least I can do after how I behaved. Walter accepted the coffee gratefully. It had been a while since a customer showed such courtesy. Richard sat beside the mechanic and continued watching him work. Mr. Thompson, can I ask you a personal question? Of course, sir. How do you keep your patience with difficult customers like me? Walter paused for a moment and looked at his oil-stained hands. You know, Mr. Bennett, I've learned that anger only hurts the one feeling it. When someone is rude to me, I think that person must be suffering for some reason. And suffering is punishment enough. You're right. I was going through a very hard time when I first came here. Do you want to talk about it? Richard hesitated for a moment, but something in Walter's fatherly manner encouraged him to open up. I'm having problems at work. The company where I'm an executive is going through restructuring, and my position might be cut. At home, my wife and son complain that I never have time for them. I feel like I'm failing at everything. Walter kept working as he listened. He didn't judge or give hasty advice. He just listened with the patience of someone who understands that sometimes people just need someone to hear them. It must be very hard to handle so much pressure at once. It is. And the worst part is I've become someone I don't even recognize. Rude, impatient, always stressed. That can change, Mr. Bennett. It's never too late to choose to be a better person. You really think so? I'm sure of it. Look how different you are today. You brought coffee, you're talking to me as an equal. That shows deep down you're a good person. Richard felt his eyes grow moist. For months, no one had said anything positive about him. Thank you for saying that, Walter. No need to thank me. It's the truth. On the third day, Richard arrived earlier and found Walter opening the auto shop. The elderly mechanic walked with a slight limp from an old back injury. Good morning, Walter. How's your leg doing? Good morning, Mr. Bennett. It's just an old thing, some back pain that flares up in the cold. Have you seen a doctor? Walter chuckled softly. Doctors are a luxury I can't afford, sir. This pain just comes with age. Richard grew thoughtful. He earned in a month more than Walter likely made in a year, yet he'd never considered the struggles people like the mechanic faced just to get health care. Walter, I have a great health plan through my company. I can book you an appointment with an orthopedic specialist. Don't worry about me, Mr. Bennett. It's not worry, it's gratitude. You've been so helpful to me, and I'd like to return the favor somehow. Walter was moved by the gesture. It had been years since he'd seen a doctor for lack of funds. If it's not too much trouble. No trouble at all. I'll call right now to schedule. Richard took out his phone, and within minutes, he'd arranged a private appointment for Walter. The mechanic didn't know how to thank him. Mr. Bennett, this is incredibly kind of you. It's the least I can do. Emily, who'd been listening, was surprised by Richard's transformation. The arrogant man from his first visit had become someone entirely different. On the fourth day, while Walter worked on the engine, Richard helped by organizing tools and cleaning parts. He'd never done manual labor before, but found himself enjoying it. Walter, can I tell you something? Of course, sir. These last few days at the shop have been the most peaceful I've had in months. I can't explain it, but I feel at ease here. Walter smiled as he adjusted a part. That's because there's no rush here, Mr. Bennett. Everything happens in its own time, no use forcing it. You're right, at my job everything's due yesterday. Everyone's always running, always stressed. And does that make you happy? Richard paused to consider the question. No, truthfully everyone's miserable, but we think that's just how it has to be. It doesn't have to be that way, sir. Life can be simpler. How so? Walter set down his tool and sat beside Richard. Look, Mr. Bennett, I don't have much schooling, but life's taught me a few things. One is that happiness lies in simple things, in a job well done, in good conversation with a friend, in my daughter's hug when I come home tired. But what about money, success? Money matters, sure, but only enough to live with dignity. More than that doesn't bring happiness, just worry. Richard reflected on those words. He'd always chased more money, more success, more recognition. Yet the more he had, the unhappier he felt. Walter, you're a very wise man. Not wise, sir, just old, Walter laughed. And when you get old, you learn to see what truly matters in life. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us newcomers. Now, continuing. On the fifth day, the car was ready. Walter had done impeccable work, replacing all necessary parts and giving the vehicle a full tune-up. The engine purred like new. All set, Mr. Bennett. Your car's better than new. Richard started the car and felt the difference immediately. The engine ran smooth and quiet, with a power he hadn't felt in years. How long is the warranty on the service? 6 months, sir. But if there's any problem, you can bring it back and I'll fix it free of charge. Mr. Walter, I have a confession to make. Walter stopped what he was doing and paid attention. The first time I came here, I recorded videos making fun of you. I posted them on social media to humiliate you. Walter stayed quiet for a moment, taking in the information. And now I want to post another video. But this time, to publicly apologize and tell everyone what an amazing person you are. You don't have to do that, Mr. Richard. Yes, I do. I made a mistake and I need to make it right. Richard took out his phone and started recording. Folks, a few weeks ago, I posted a really bad video here, humiliating a mechanic. I was completely wrong. Mr. Walter is one of the most honest and skilled people I've ever met. He not only fixed my car perfectly, but also taught me life lessons I'll carry forever. If you're on the south side of Chicago and need a mechanic, come to Thompson Auto Repair. Here you'll find honesty, quality, and a whole lot of care. Walter was moved as he watched the video. Emily's eyes were also filled with tears. Thank you, Mr. Richard. That means a lot to me. It's the least I can do. Richard went to pay for the service, but Walter made an unexpected offer. "Mr. Richard, how about instead of paying me all at once, you come here once a month for a year to help with some jobs? You can learn mechanics and I get an extra hand." "You'd really do that?" "Of course, you've got a lot of potential to learn, and I've enjoyed your company." Richard agreed immediately. It had been a long time since he'd felt so useful and welcome somewhere. From that day on, every first Monday of the month, Richard spent the day at the shop. He learned to change oil, replace brake pads, and tune engines. But more importantly, he learned patience, how to listen to people and to value honest work. At home, the change was noticeable. Richard started coming home earlier, engaging more with his family, and showing more affection to his wife and son. Work stress was still there, but he'd learned to handle difficulties better. 6 months later, at the company where he worked, Richard was offered a chance to lead a social responsibility project. His first idea was to partner with small local repair shops, offering training courses and interest-free loans for tools. "Mr. Walter, I have a proposal for you." "Go ahead, Mr. Richard." "My company wants to invest in social projects. How about turning your shop into a training center for young mechanics?" Walter was intrigued. "How so?" "We'll provide new equipment, modern tools, and training materials. You'd offer courses for underprivileged kids in the neighborhood. It's a partnership where everyone wins." Emily, who was listening, got excited. "Dad, it'd be an amazing chance to help others." Walter thought for a few minutes. The shop had always been his pride, but the idea of teaching and helping young people learn a trade was very appealing. "And I'd still own the shop?" "Of course, you'd just receive the investment to expand. The shop would still be yours." "Then I accept." The project was a success from the start. Thompson Auto Repair became a reference in the area. Walter began teaching not just mechanics, but also values like honesty, respect, and dedication. Richard, who'd been promoted at his company because of the project's success, visited the shop regularly, not just to supervise, but because he'd found a piece there that was missing elsewhere in his life. A year after their first meeting, Richard brought his family to meet Walter. His wife and son were charmed by the mechanic and his daughter. "Daddy, Mr. Walter is really cool," said Richard's 10-year-old son. "Yes, he is, son. He's a very special person." Walter prepared a barbecue to welcome Richard's family. Emily made a special salad, and the whole neighborhood was invited. That's how they welcomed important people, with simplicity and warmth. During lunch, Richard's wife, Jessica, spoke to Walter about the change she'd noticed in her husband. "Mr. Walter, I don't know what happened between you two, but my husband has become the man I fell in love with 15 years ago." "He was always that man, Mrs. Jessica. He just got a little lost for a while." "You have a special gift with people." "It's not a gift, it's just about treating everyone with the same respect we'd like to receive." That afternoon, Walter taught Richard's son how to change a car's oil. The boy was fascinated by the world of auto repair and spent the rest of the day asking questions. "Mr. Walter, when I grow up, can I work here with you?" "Of course, champ. But you have to study hard in school first, okay?" Richard watched the scene, moved. His son had never shown interest in learning anything practical. He was always glued to video games or tablets. 2 years later, Thompson Auto Repair had become a model for other communities. Walter had trained over 50 young people, all employed at local garages or working for themselves. Richard had been promoted again and now coordinated social projects in several cities. But he never missed his monthly visits to Walter. That friendship had become one of the most important things in his life. During one of those visits, Walter shared something that left Richard stunned. "Mr. Richard, I need to tell you something." "Go ahead, Mr. Walter." "Remember when you asked if I'd always been a mechanic?" "I do." "I didn't tell you the whole truth back then. Before working at the auto parts factory, I was a mechanical engineer." Richard was speechless. "An engineer? Why didn't you tell me before?" "Because it didn't matter. What mattered was what I was doing in the present, not what I'd been in the past." "But Mr. Walter, with your background, you could have been making a lot more money." Walter smiled and gestured to the young men learning in the shop. "Do you think I'd find more satisfaction working in an office?" Richard looked around. The young men worked joyfully. Walter guided them with patience and care. and Emily managed everything efficiently and with dedication. There was a harmony in that place he'd never seen in any company. "You're right, Mr. Walter. Money isn't everything." "No, it isn't, Mr. Richard. And look what we've built together." Just then, an elderly woman arrived at the shop, carrying a heavy grocery bag. "Good afternoon, Mr. Walter. I brought the treats I promised the boys." "Mrs. Wilson, how are you?" She greeted Walter warmly and handed out homemade donuts to everyone. Richard watched curiously. "Who is she?" "Mrs. Wilson has been my neighbor for 20 years. Whenever I can, I help her with something, and she always repays me in her own way." "What kind of help?" "Oh, simple things. Changing a light bulb, fixing a faucet, taking her to the doctor when needed." Richard grew thoughtful. Walter didn't make much money, but he was rich in relationships. He had dozens of friends in the neighborhood, was respected by everyone, and lived with a serenity money couldn't buy. "Mr. Walter, can I ask you a personal question?" "Of course." "Have you ever regretted any choice you've made in life?" Walter took a few seconds before answering. "You know, Mr. Richard, I've been through some very tough times. When I lost my engineering job, when my wife passed away, when I thought I wouldn't be able to support Emily on my own. And how did you overcome all that? With the help of good people. When we're going through hard times, someone always shows up to lend a hand. The secret is to accept the help and give back when we can." "And you never felt bitter about life?" "Oh, I did. But I learned that bitterness only brings more pain. It's better to accept what we can't change and work to improve what's within our reach." That conversation deeply moved Richard. Walter had faced losses and hardships far greater than his own, yet he had chosen the path of gratitude and generosity. 3 years after their first meeting, Richard decided to make a radical change in his life. He quit his corporate job and opened a consulting firm specializing in social projects for small businesses. "Mr. Thompson, I want to make you an offer." "What kind of offer?" "I want you to be my partner. We can create a company that helps other mechanics and small business owners grow their businesses." Walter was surprised by the proposal. "Mr. Richard, I don't know anything about running a big company." "But you understand people, and that's more important than any technical knowledge." Emily, who had already graduated and was pursuing a master's in social management, was excited by the idea. "Dad, it would be an amazing opportunity to multiply what we already do here." Walter hesitated. He had spent his whole life working in a simple, family-like environment. The thought of being part of something bigger intimidated him. "Can I think about it?" "Of course, there's no rush." That night, Walter talked at length with Emily about the proposal. She encouraged him to accept, arguing it would be a way to help many more people. "Dad, you've already changed so many young lives here in the neighborhood. Imagine how many others you could help." "But what if I fail? What if I'm not cut out for this more complicated world?" "Dad, you're one of the wisest people I know. I'm sure it'll work out." The next morning, Walter gave Richard his answer. "I accept your offer, Mr. Richard, but on one condition." "What's that?" "The auto shop keeps running just as it always has. That's where my roots are." "Deal." The social consulting firm grew quickly. Walter proved to be an exceptional mentor, guiding small business owners not just in technical matters, but more importantly, in human values. Richard discovered that working with purpose brought far greater satisfaction than financial success. Their projects changed lives and transformed communities. The partnership between the once arrogant executive and the humble mechanic became an example in the region. Many business owners sought their services, not just to improve their businesses, but to learn about compassionate leadership. During a joint lecture at a university, a student asked what the secret to their partnership's success was. Richard looked at Walter and smiled before answering. "The secret was me learning that knowledge without humility is worthless, and that the wisest people are sometimes found in the simplest places." Walter added, "And I learned that we should never judge someone by first impressions. Sometimes people just need a chance to show who they really are." After the lecture, many students approached to ask more questions. Walter answered with the same patience he showed at the auto shop, while Richard watched in admiration. 5 years after their first hostile encounter, Richard and Walter had become the best of friends. Their families gathered regularly, their children played together, and a genuine friendship blossomed among them all. Thompson Auto Repair had expanded and now offered courses in various technical fields. Walter continued teaching mechanics, but also mentored young entrepreneurs who wanted to start their own businesses. Emily had married one of her father's first students and was expecting their first child. Walter was thrilled at the prospect of becoming a grandfather. "Mr. Richard, can you believe how life works out?" "What do you mean, Mr. Walter?" "If you hadn't been rude to me that first day, maybe none of this would have happened." Richard reflected on those words. It was true. If he'd been polite from the start, he probably would have paid for the service and never returned to the shop. Maybe it was fate, Mr. Walter. Maybe. Or maybe that's just how life is. Sometimes the bad things have to happen so the good things can follow. That day, as they worked together fixing an old car, Richard realized how much he'd changed. The arrogant, impatient man from 5 years ago had given way to someone calmer, kinder, and far happier. "Mr. Walter, can I tell you something?" "Of course." "You saved my life." Walter stopped what he was doing and looked at Richard. "How so?" "I was becoming a bad person. I was losing my family, my health, my happiness. If I hadn't met you, I don't know where I'd be today." "Mr. Richard, you saved yourself. I just showed you the way. You were the one who chose to change." "Still, I'll always be grateful." Walter smiled and went back to work. "The feeling's mutual, Mr. Richard. You changed my life too. Gave me the chance to help more people than I ever imagined." That evening, after closing the shop, the two friends sat on the sidewalk to share a beer and talk about life. It was a ritual they'd adopted years ago. "Mr. Walter, do you have any regrets in life?" "I've had plenty, but I've learned regret only helps if it teaches you something. If it just torments you, it's better to let it go." "And what have your regrets taught you?" "That life's too short to hold grudges, that forgiving sets the forgiver free, and that it's never too late to start over." Richard absorbed those words, as he always did with Walter's advice. 5 years of friendship, and he was still learning from his friend. "Mr. Walter, if you could give one piece of advice to young people starting out, what would it be?" Walter thought for a moment before answering. "I'd tell them to treat everyone with respect, no matter their station, to be honest in everything they do, and to never give up on their dreams even when all seems lost." "That's good advice. And you, Mr. Richard, what would you say?" "I'd tell them not to chase success so hard they forget to live, and to always stay humble enough to learn from anyone, anywhere." The two friends sat quietly for a while watching the street. Children played on the sidewalk, neighbors chatted on their porches, old men played dominoes in the square. It was the simple, genuine life Walter had always valued, and Richard had learned to cherish. "Mr. Walter, thank you for everything." "Thank you, Mr. Richard, for giving me the chance to have a friend like you." When they said goodbye that night, both knew they'd built something special. A friendship born from adversity, strengthened by honesty, and rooted in mutual respect. Their story spread through the neighborhood, becoming an example of how people can change and how forgiveness can transform lives. Walter remained the same humble, wise mechanic he'd always been. Richard became a conscientious businessman and a loyal friend. And the little auto shop in Hopeville continued to be so much more than just a place to fix cars. It was a space where people found not only solutions to mechanical problems, but also inspiration to become better versions of themselves. 10 years after their first meeting, Walter organized a party to celebrate the success of the social programs they had created together. Hundreds of young people who had gone through the courses attended, many now with their own shops and businesses. Richard gave an emotional speech, sharing how meeting Walter had completely changed his outlook on life. Walter, in turn, thanked everyone present for giving meaning to his work. "My dear friends," Walter said to the crowd, "I've always believed that true success isn't measured by what we gain, but by what we manage to give. Today, seeing all of you here, I know we've given so much more than I ever imagined." The party lasted late into the night. Stories were told, tears were shed, and plenty of laughter was shared. It was a celebration of a decade of transformation, both personal and social. At the end of the night, when everyone had gone home, Walter and Richard stayed behind, tidying up the shop. "Mr. Walter, do you have any new dreams?" Walter smiled and pointed to a photo on the wall where he stood with Emily and their newborn grandson. "My dream now is to watch my grandson grow up in a world that's a little better than the one we found. And who knows, maybe he'll carry on the work we started. I'm sure he will, Mr. Walter. With a grandfather like you, he can only become an amazing person." "And what about you, Mr. Richard? What are your new dreams?" Richard looked around the shop, now equipped with modern tools but still keeping its same warm essence. "My dream is to replicate what we've done here in other communities, to show the world it's possible to run a business while keeping humanity at its core." "That's a beautiful dream, and I'm certain you'll make it happen." As they closed up the shop that night, the two friends knew they had created something far greater than just a business partnership. They had built a legacy of human transformation that would continue impacting lives for generations. The story of the arrogant executive who became a humble man and the wise mechanic who became an inspiring mentor proves it's never too late to change. That forgiveness has the power to heal deep wounds, and that the truest friendships sometimes come from the most unlikely meetings. Walter continued working until he was 75, always with the same dedication and warmth as ever. Emily took over the social programs, carrying on her father's work with the same passion. Richard expanded his consulting business to cities across the United States, always upholding Walter's teachings about treating people with dignity and respect. He never forgot the lessons learned in that little shop on the south side. And Thompson Auto Repair remained a beacon of hope in the community, proving that with honest work, humility, and a whole lot of heart, it's possible to build a better world for everyone. The end. Now tell us what you thought of this story of transformation and perseverance. Do you believe Walter made the right choice in forgiving Richard? Share your thoughts in the comments and let us know where you're watching from. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss other inspiring stories like this one.